Today's lesson is topic 10.1, division as repeated subtraction. The objective for today is that I will model and record division as repeated subtraction. Be sure to include the title in your notes. Today we're going to be looking at this problem. A can of tennis balls holds 3 balls. How many cans are needed to hold 45 tennis balls? Okay, so what we're going to be doing today is we are going to be subtracting our groups that we have until we end up with 0. I know some of you have already been working with long division, and you could probably go ahead and set this up as a long division problem. But to understand how we get to our answers in long division, we want to start with understanding that it starts with repeated subtraction. So how many cans are needed to hold a total of 45 tennis balls? So the total amount, my largest number that I'm going to have in this problem is going to be 45. So that is the number that I start with. Each one of the cans holds 3 tennis balls. So what I'm trying to determine is how many cans total I will end up with. So to do that, you start with 45 and subtract until you get all the way down to 0. If you notice over here on the right side, there's groups already created for us. So on the far right side, they went ahead and grouped up 3 10 times to give us 30. So we already knew in this first part right here, I've already subtracted 3 10 times. Okay, well, we then are still at 15. I still need to continue subtracting until I end up at 0. So as we subtract, we continue subtracting 5 more times to end up with a total of 15. So my total number of times that I subtracted was 10 up here and then 5 down here. So that is the number of cans that I would actually need to hold 45 tennis balls. Now we're going to try that again in another problem right here. A certain bird feeder holds 6 cups of bird feeder. How many times can this feeder be filled up using a 72-cup bag of bird seed? When we read problems like this, sometimes we get a little overwhelmed at first, but let's take a look at it again. A certain bird feeder holds 6 cups of bird feeder. Okay, so this bird feeder is going to hold 6 cups of bird seed, is essentially what it's holding. So it's going to be filled up several times from a 72-cup bag of bird seed. So our largest number is what we start with. So we start with our 72. And this time, instead of showing you how many times I subtracted 6, we're going to do it in groups. So I know that 10 groups of 6 would equal 60, because that's one of my multiplication facts. So we're starting with subtracting 6 to begin with. Or 60 to begin with, 6 groups of 10, which was 60. So that's where this part comes in. Subtract that, we end up with 12. Well, I know that if I do 2 groups of 6, I will end up with 12. So I continue subtracting to get 0. However many times I subtracted the first time, and then add that to the number of times I subtracted the second time, and I end up with 12 times. So this bird feeder, the bird feeder holds 6 cups, and it will go empty. Every time it goes empty, I can refill it 12 times from my 1 bag of bird seed that I bought before I would need to buy a new bag of bird feed. We're going to try a couple more. Number 1 says, how many 3s are in 48? So on this one, we're going to start with 48. We'll start with our 48, and we want to figure out how many groups of 3 are in 48. So I could start just subtracting 3. But I'm going to start the same way we did the other one. How many groups, or how many would I have if I had 3 subtracted 10 times? I'm sure most of you are saying 30, because you'd be correct. So if I subtract 3 10 times, I would be subtracting 30. So I'm going to start by subtracting that. 8 minus 0 is 8. 4 minus 3 would give me 1. Now, I know that 18 divided by 3 is also one of my multiplication facts. And another way to think about that is 3 times what gives me 18. So I've got 3 times 6 equals 18. So I'm going to subtract 18 and end up at 0. So now I take a look at how many times I subtracted. Well, I subtracted 3 groups of 10 up here, so I subtracted 10 times up here. And this time I subtracted 3 6 times. So I add up these two numbers I boxed in. 10 plus 6 would be 16 times. Now, I know this might be a little confusing, but I would love for you to try number 2 in your notes. How many 4s are in 60? Go ahead and give it a try, and we'll talk about it in class.